Sergeant Kalani's, my inspiration, my art. Welcome. Today I'm going to draw a witch. You can customize the drawing any way you like. Link to this magical witch is in the description. I started off with drawing the head because that's how you measure the proportions. I made a quick sketch of the torso and hips, but I felt like they needed a bit more work. I decided to make the anatomy of the drawing a bit more exaggerated, less realistic. To make the drawing of the witch fluid, I drew a line in the center of essentially where her spine would be. Doing this makes it seem like the character isn't stiff. I needed to add some muscles to the stick figure that I drew so that it actually looks like a human. The hands were of course difficult to try and figure out the placement of. I quite like how I drew the swirls of magic though. Originally, the skirt was going to be blowing in the wind, but then I decided to cut down the canvas size and get rid of the skirt, because the drawing is already quite detailed. I made sure to have the braids in her hair to be flowing in the wind as well as her hair. I tend to use different layers for different objects in the drawing. That way if I ever need to, I can always turn them off and then turn them back on so that I can see things a bit better. I decided to make her hat a bit bigger, so it covers a bit more of her face. Makes her seem more mysterious. I also worked a bit more on the anatomy of the witch. I drew the braid behind her back so that the entire piece looks 3D. I added a bit more detail into the hair so it didn't look as flat as it did before. I find it interesting how I decided to make it seem like the witch was wearing some sort of suit. It's not really something you picture when you're thinking of a witch. The only fantastical clothes she has is her hat. But what do you think of the outfit I chose for her? Was it a good decision or not? You can see on the hips of the witch that I made the fabric go out a bit, so it doesn't seem like she's gonna have weirdly colored skin. It needs to seem like she's actually wearing something. Everything in this piece, from the hair and the hands, is pointing to a corner, and that corner is where the magic is. But I still needed people to, look at the witch. So I used her hat to essentially be pointing at her face, even though you can't see it. It draws the viewer's eye to the witch, which is already quite big, so the viewer should already be automatically looking at it. The rule of thirds is something that's in composition. It shows that you shouldn't put objects in your drawing in the center, but instead they should be slightly to the side. You can see this with my drawing. I was finally able to start inking the drawing. Since my sketching lines were thin and not too messy, I was able to get most of my inking lines exactly as I wanted them. You can tell in places where the lines intersect that they're a bit darker and a bit thicker. This was intentional. It's called line weight. I'm actually really happy with how the hands turned out. I experimented with the colors for a second. I made sure to give her some blush, so it seems like she has actual skin. The red magic was already kind of glowing, but I decided to make it seem like it's glowing even more. I gave this witch a warmer color palette. The reds make her seem a bit evil, the browns make her seem a bit nicer. It's more calming. I did just a little bit of shading. I used the shading to indicate wrinkles on the fabric, instead of straight up drawing wrinkle lines. I reflected the warmth of the witch into the background with the red blood moon. Even the hat, that is incredibly dark, still reflects in the background because of the night sky. I'm re-inking the lines because I'm going to print it out and I don't want any of the color. The outline is black and so is the hat, so I added the blue so that I can try and differentiate them. You can do that with any color, it doesn't have to be blue. It just needs to be lighter than the color you're using. Witches tended to have familiars. What do you think her familiar is? A familiar is some sort of animal that tends to have its own magic. They help witches with theirs. Unfortunately, when I made this drawing, I had the colors and the line art on the same layer, which means I can't keep them separate, and I can't turn the colors off. So what I do now is keep the line art and the colors and the background on completely separate layers. I made sure to keep the lines as similar to the original as possible, with only a few changes here and there. I used sticker lines on the most important things in the piece, like the witch and the magic. But for things such as the background, I used thinner lines, because they didn't have lines to begin with. I cleaned up the background lines a bit. You can get this design on multiple talismans. You can get this design on a bottle. Maybe this bottle even has the magical potion of water. My inspiration, my art.